Imagine the scene. You're standing in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. If you've never been there, you really need to picture this rigid, high desert landscape.
It's stunning.
It is. You have these giant saguaro cacti. They're older than the country itself, just standing guard over these winding, dusty roads. And tucked away are these multi-million-dollar homes. It's quiet. It is incredibly private.
It's the kind of place people go to disappear in a good way,
Yeah.
to retire, get away from the noise.
Exactly. But as of this morning, Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, that silence has been, well, it's been completely shattered.
It's gone from a retirement haven to a high-stakes federal crime scene almost overnight. And
Yeah.
that contrast is, it's just jarring. You have this serene backdrop now filled with crime scene tape and federal agents.
It really is. We are talking about the home of Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah.
And for those who've seen the headlines, yes, this is the 84-year-old mother of NBC Today show anchor Savannah Guthrie. But I want to be very clear right off the bat. Our mission for this deep dive is to cut through that celebrity noise.
Yeah.
The headlines are screaming, Savannah's mom missing. But the reality on the ground has shifted into something much darker, much more complex.
Absolutely. This isn't a silver alert. We aren't looking for a senior citizen who just wandered off in confusion. As of today, authorities are treating this as a confirmed abduction investigation.
A confirmed abduction.
And frankly, the forensic profile of this case is unlike anything we typically see in that region.
So we're going to look at the forensic anatomy of this crime. We have a stack of sources here, police reports, stuff in the timeline, physical forensics from the scene, and some honestly chilling details about digital evidence. We need to parse what's real and what's just noise.
What stands out to me in these reports is how this case sits right at the intersection of, old school violent crime and this high-tech forensic investigation.
Okay.
You have blood on the floor. I mean, that's very physical, very primal. But then you have what we call digital witnesses, like a pacemaker and a missing ring camera. It's a collision of two different eras of criminal investigation.
And this terrifying theory is emerging called tiger kidnapping, which I definitely want us to unpack later because it just changes the entire motive profile.
It changes everything.
But first, let's establish the baseline. To understand the disruption, you have to understand the routine. What do we know about Nancy's life before Saturday?
Well, the baseline is critical because it definitively rules out the accidental theories right out of the gate. Nancy lived independently, which is, a massive point of pride for her family. But sources are clear she had significant physical limitations.
Okay.
She has mobility issues. The reports state she cannot walk 50 yards unassisted.
Which physically precludes the wandering off theory. That's a hard stop on that line of thinking.
Completely. If you can't walk 50 yards, you don't end up miles away in the desert. That lack of mobility is the first forensic fact that points toward, external intervention. She didn't leave. She was taken.
Okay, let's look at the timeline, because in cases like this, the timeline is everything. Saturday, January 31st, everything seems normal. She's out to dinner with her daughter, Annie Guthrie.
That dinner is our last verified proof of life. Annie drops Nancy off at home between 9:40 CR and 9:45 p.m.
And Annie reports nothing strange.
Nothing. No red flags. The house is quiet. Nancy goes inside. This is the window where normalcy just ends.
And silence. The next morning, Sunday, February 1st, Nancy doesn't show up for church at 11 a.m. Now, for anyone listening who has an elderly parent, you know that ritual is everything. You don't just skip church.
It's what we call the absence of presence. In criminology, we look for breaks in pattern. For an 84-year-old religious woman, missing church is a massive, screaming break in pattern. That's what triggers the alarm.
So the family goes to check on her.
Around noon, the car is there, the house is empty. Initially, police treat this as a welfare check. Maybe she fell, maybe she's sick, but that status shifts dramatically once they step inside.
This is where it gets dark. They find blood. And the reports aren't just saying a drop of blood. They're describing a trail.
Specifically, spatter on the brown tiles leading to the front door. Now, spatter is a specific forensic term. It implies force.
Right.
A drop is gravity, spatter is velocity. It tells investigators that a struggle or an injury happened while the victim was mobile or, more disturbingly, while being dragged.
And the fact that it's on brown tiles, does that matter? I mean, I imagine that makes it harder to see.
It matters for the cleanup and the discovery. If you're a criminal trying to hide evidence, brown tiles in a dim hallway can mask blood to the naked eye. But luminol, it reveals everything.
So the fact that they found it so quickly?
It suggests there was a significant amount of it, or the trail was obvious enough that it didn't need chemical enhancement right away.
Do we know whose blood it is? Because that seems like the pivot point for the entire investigation.
That is the million-dollar question. Samples are at a lab in Phoenix right now. But think about the deduction here. If it's Nancy's blood, it confirms she was injured during the abduction. That escalates the medical urgency tenfold.
It means she's wounded and without care.
Exactly. And if it's the perpetrator's blood,
A huge break.
huge break, but with a catch. If it's the suspect's blood and they aren't in CODIS, the National DNA Database, then you have a genetic profile but no name. It tells you who it isn't but not who it is.
But it's something to match against later.
Exactly. Something for later.
And alongside the blood, there was forced entry. This wasn't Nancy opening the door for a friendly neighbor.
No, this was a breach. Someone crossed the threshold with hostile intent, and once they were inside, the scene they left behind. It tells a story of abrupt removal.
They called it the abandonment indicator in the report. I've heard that term used for missing hikers, but it applies here too.
It applies even more here. She left her wallet, she left her vehicle, but most importantly, she left her cell phone.
Which is everything.
In 2026, the cell phone is essentially a digital limb. Nobody, teenager or octogenarian, voluntarily leaves their home for an extended period without it. Leaving the phone is the strongest behavioral signal we have of involuntary removal.
It also cuts off a lifeline for the police, doesn't it? They
Yeah.
can't track her location via GPS.
It turns the phone from a tracking device into a forensic archive. It's useless for finding where she is right now. But you can bet detectives are ripping that phone apart digitally. Who did she text? Was there any unusual activity?
But for the active search, it's a dead end.
A total dead end.
Okay, speaking of technology, I want to pivot to the digital witnesses, because this is where the sophistication of the criminals really starts to show. We mentioned the Ring camera.
This detail really bothers me. There was a Ring-style camera at the front door, and it wasn't just smashed, it was physically removed.
So someone unscrewed it or just ripped it off the wall and took it with them?
Exactly. This is counterforensics. It suggests premeditation. These weren't some random burglars who panicked because they saw a camera. They knew it was there, they anticipated it, and they removed the risk.
They took the evidence with them, but doesn't Ring upload to the cloud? Shouldn't the video be on a server somewhere?
It usually does, but there's something called cloud latency. It takes a few milliseconds, maybe seconds, for that video to hit the server. If the criminals were using a Wi-Fi jammer, which is surprisingly easy to buy online, or if they cut the connection fast enough, that final video file might be corrupted or incomplete.
So detectives are contacting Amazon, contacting Ring, trying to see if there are any fragments of data.
They are trying to scrape the digital floorboards, even a partial frame of a face, a tattoo, a shoe. That could be the break in the case. But the fact that the camera is gone tells you these people knew how the system worked.
But there's another digital witness, one that's, well, it's even more intimate and honestly a bit dystopian, but helpful here. Nancy's pacemaker.
This is fascinating. We are entering the era of the Internet of Bodies. Nancy has a pacemaker. And modern devices, they often sync with a bedside monitor or, directly with a smartphone or a watch to log heart rhythm data.
And investigators found something specific with this data,
They found a desynchronization event.
meaning the devices stopped talking to each other.
Correct. And that moment offers a precise timestamp. It tells us exactly when she was moved out of range of that hub. Eyewitnesses are terrible at time. They say it was around 10, maybe 10:30.
But a pacemaker desync.
That's a hard data point. It says at 9:58 and 12 seconds, she left the room.
Or, and this is gruesome thought, could it mean the heart stopped?
That is the darker possibility. If the device stops recording a rhythm, it logs that too, but usually the desync indicates distance first. It locks down the timeline of the abduction better than anything else. It's a silent witness that the kidnappers probably didn't even think about.
So we have a timeline, we have a scene. Now we have to ask, why? Why target an 84-year-old woman? She's not a high-profile target herself, which leads us to the tiger kidnapping theory.
Right, the term comes from the animal kingdom. You stalk a herd to pick off the weakest member. In criminology, a tiger kidnapping is a strategy where you don't attack the hard target.
The hard target being Savannah Guthrie.
Exactly. She lives in New York, works at Rockefeller Plaza, probably has private security, is constantly surrounded by people. She's inaccessible. Hitting her is a paramilitary operation.
So to get to her resources, you attack the soft target.
You take the vulnerable family member, the elderly mother in the quiet desert home, to leverage the high net worth relative.
And so Nancy is the leverage. The goal isn't Nancy herself. The goal is Savannah's money. It's just Brutal logic.
It's a bank heist where the vault is emotional, not physical. They are betting that the family will pay anything to get Grandma back.
And we have evidence pointing to this, right? The ransom notes.
We do. Reports indicate notes were sent to TMZ and a local Tucson station, KOLD, demanding millions in Bitcoin.
Now, usually when I hear ransom notes sent to TMZ, I roll my eyes. It just screams hoax.
I would usually agree with you. 99% of the time, it's just noise, people playing sick games. But here's the differentiator. These notes contained non-public information.
Okay.
They described the interior of Nancy's home, the layout, and they described the specific clothing she was wearing when she was taken.
Information that hadn't been released to the media yet.
Exactly. That is proof of access. It moves the note from hoax to credible lead. It validates the threat. It tells the police, we are the ones who took her.
And they want Bitcoin, which, again, feels very modern. But isn't Bitcoin traceable? I feel like we always hear about the FBI seizing crypto after hacks.
It's a common misconception that Bitcoin is anonymous. It's actually pseudonymous. The ledger, the blockchain is public. Anyone can see the transactions.
So the FBI is just watching the wallet right now.
Yeah. They are staring at it. They can't see who owns it yet, but they can see if money moves. The criminals are holding a digital key, but the FBI is watching the digital lock. The second those coins move to an exchange that requires ID, what we call know your customer rules, the FBI can swoop in.
But surely sophisticated kidnappers know this.
Oh, they do. They might try to use mixers or tumblers to scramble the coins, but forensic crypto tracking has gotten incredibly good. It's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse on the blockchain. But relying on Bitcoin actually gives the FBI a thread to pull.
Right, whereas cash in a duffel bag leaves no digital footprint.
Not at all.
I want to shift to the investigation itself because the tension in these reports is palpable. We keep hearing about this race against time, and usually that's just a dramatic figure of speech for TV.
In this case, it's a biological reality. Nancy has heart issues and high blood pressure. She's dependent on daily medication.
And we are past the 72-hour mark now.
That 72-hour mark is the critical threshold. In a kidnapping, the hostage is what we call a depreciating asset. The kidnappers need her alive to get the money, but Nancy's fragility means she could go into medical crisis simply by not having her pills.
So even if they don't hurt her intentionally, she could die from neglect.
Exactly. And if she dies, the charge becomes murder and the kidnappers lose their leverage. This puts the police in a terrible position.
How so?
Well, usually in a kidnapping, you might play the long game. You wait, you surveil, you listen, you try to wear them down. But here, you can't wait. Every hour she's without meds, the probability of a fatal outcome just skyrockets.
So they have to be aggressive.
They have to kick down doors because they can't afford to wait for a negotiation.
And part of that is digital. They're doing something called tower dumps to find ghost phones. Can you explain that?
Sure. Since they can't track Nancy's phone, they're looking for the perpetrator's phones. They get a warrant to take all the data from the cell towers in the Catalina foothills during that specific window of the abduction.
That must be thousands of phones. Residents, delivery drivers.
It is. It's a digital haystack. But they're looking for ghost phones devices that pinged near the home during that window and then vanished or moved away in a convoy. Even if they use burner phones, the movement pattern can give them away.
So if two phones were sitting near Nancy's house for an hour, and then both moved at high speed toward the highway at the same time.
That's a correlation. That's a lead. And if those phones have never pinged in Tucson before, that's your suspect.
Now, we have to address the elephant in the room regarding the media coverage. There has been some serious controversy with the reporting by Ashley Banfield.
Yeah, this is a classic example of the friction between modern media speed and law enforcement accuracy. Banfield reported, citing her own sources, that Tommaso Cioni, Nancy's son-in-law, Annie's husband, was a prime suspect.
And the sheriff, Chris Nanos, did not take kindly to that.
No. He explicitly denied it. He called the reporting irresponsible.
But said, let's be real for a second. The police are looking at the family, aren't they? Statistically.
Of course they are. And this is what listeners need to understand about criminal procedure. In, 90% of these cases, the perpetrator is known to the victim. Police always look at the last people to see the victim alive. That's Annie and her husband.
It's just procedural due diligence.
Exactly. So questioning them isn't an accusation, it's just checking the boxes. You have to clear the inner circle before you expand to strangers. But when the media elevates that procedural check to prime suspect, It creates
It
chaos.
muddies the water.
It wastes investigative resources because now the police have to spend time managing PR instead of chasing real leads. And you don't want the public hunting the wrong person.
Right. And speaking of resources, this has gone all the way to the top. President Trump has directed all federal law enforcement to help.
That brings in the heavy hitters. The FBI is heavily involved now, and that's crucial because of the extortion angle. They bring the cyber division for the Bitcoin, the behavioral analysis unit for the profile, the resources to process DNA in hours instead of weeks.
There was some talk about the border, too, given that Tucson is only 60 miles from Mexico.
It's a natural question in Arizona, but Sheriff Nanos has currently ruled out cross-border cartel involvement. The Border Patrol is helping, but mostly because they're experts at tracking people in the desert and they have the best helicopters with thermal imaging.
So they're just using every tool in the box.
Every single one.
So let's try to summarize where we are. This is day 4.
Day 4, we have a confirmed abduction, we have a clear motive, financial extortion via tiger kidnapping, and we have physical evidence of violence at the scene.
And we have a victim whose physical clock is ticking faster than the investigation might be able to move.
That is the terrifying dynamic. You have a wealthy family willing to pay, you have sophisticated kidnappers holding the digital key, but the biological reality of an 84-year-old woman without heart medication, that's the ultimate deadline.
It's a precarious balance. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. We talked about the Catalina foothills at the beginning, how exclusive and private it is.
The privacy paradox.
Exactly. People pay millions for that privacy, for the long driveways, the high walls, the distance from neighbors. But in a moment like this, that privacy becomes a weapon against you.
It strips away natural surveillance. In a crowded city street, someone sees you get grabbed. In a dense suburb, a neighbor hears the glass break. But in the foothills, that solitude and silence that you pay for.
That's exactly what the kidnappers used to their advantage. They bought themselves time because no one could see or hear the crime happen.
It's a chilling thought. Privacy is a vulnerability.
We will keep following this story as it develops. Thanks for diving in with us.
Stay safe.